Folks, we're getting a little bit of an early start. We have about 2 more minutes to the start of the webinar, so we're going to let you start filing in a little bit early, and we'll get started in just about 120 seconds. In case you're just joining us, folks, we're going to get started in about 15 seconds. We'll let some of you continue to join us. Good morning to everyone. Good day to you, for everyone that's joined so far. All right. Good morning, everyone. Hi. My name and face, briefly, is Jim Sabrinsky. I'm your host today for today's Analytic and Data TechCast, which will start immediately following some brief introduction and housekeeping information. I've been an enthusiastic supporter of AnDOUC over the years, and I'm always on the lookout for interesting and informative topics. And today is no exception, something that our AnDOUC community can benefit from. Our speaker today, Bobby Curtis, has a compelling story about how he built an AI-driven framework that helps users quickly deploy GoldenGate technology and make sure it's running efficiently once deployed. So we can take questions efficiently. If you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A area, not the chat window, and we'll have Bobby answer them definitely at the end of his session, and possibly if we have some time right in the middle of his session. Could I have the next slide, please, Bobby? And what we want to do is keep you informed about all the wonderful things that we do via AnDOUC TechCasts. We have another one coming up in just about 2 weeks from today on the favorite features of our panelists of Oracle Analytic Cluster, or OAC. We have several folks that are experts about this and a mystery guest from Oracle. So have a look at our TechCast page, and here's the link to it right here. We also have our past recording from September 19th, a really great intro into Oracle Fusion Data and Intelligence. The speaker contact information for this presentation, which, as you noticed, is being recorded, will be available as soon as we're done recording this meeting. And we'll get it posted out there so that you can see it. You can search for it on YouTube under the hashtag AND_TechCasts. If you have knowledge, expertise, tips, tricks, user stories that you think would be compelling, TechCasts, send them to us, please. If you go over to the TechCast page, you can submit via Sessionize your suggestions for a future TechCast. Could I have the next page, please? And of course, there are dozens of ways to connect with us. One I want to point out for sure for you is our Slack channel. This is a public Slack channel that you can connect up with us. You can question us later. All of us that are involved with AnDOUC and all of our other experts that are on the AnDOUC board and volunteering. This is a great way to connect up. I mentioned our YouTube channel already, of course, our website, and we have a whole plethora of things that you can take a look at and connect up with. Next slide, please. And the big announcement, of course, is that we have our Summit 2025 that's going to be at, if you will, old Oracle headquarters in Redwood Shores. Last year's conference was amazing. We had 3 solid days of excellent content. We are still taking, by the way, note in Sessionize. You can still submit your abstract today if you're interested. But check out, in a few more weeks, we're going to be closing the call for papers. And at that point, we will definitely have all the content out there available for you to read through. And I believe we have one more slide. Yes, and it's a chance to find out more about Bobby Curtis. By the way, we should be going for about 30 to 35 minutes here. We want to make sure that you have plenty of time to ask questions. Again, please, if you joined a little later, put them in the Q&A window, not the chat window. And I will direct them to Bobby, and he will definitely have a chance to take a look at it right after the conference. But for right now, let's meet today's speaker. Bobby Curtis is a dynamic and seasoned expert in the IT industry, currently the owner of Data, a leading global system integrator specializing in helping clients harness and utilize data for their specific business needs. Over his nearly 3 decades-long career, Bobby has worked with government entities, financial institutions, and consulting firms, gaining extensive experience in creating, maintaining, tuning, and integrating enterprise solutions. His proficiency has earned him a trusted reputation for solving complex business challenges. Previously, Bobby served as the director of product management for Oracle GoldenGate, and he's currently recognized as an Oracle ACE director. In fact, he was just recognized at Oracle Cloud World for that new level. He's also a published author, a frequent conference speaker, and blogger at dbasolved.com and Medium. Bobby's expertise spans Oracle technologies, data integration, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and data migration topics. His blog serves as a valuable resource for anyone seeking information or solutions in these areas. Bobby's extensive knowledge and hands-on experience make him a connoisseur in this field, delivering insightful and practical solutions to intricate business problems. And without further ado, Bobby, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. I don't know how to start after that rousing introduction, but I do appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Glad that everybody's able to make it today. And like Jim said, this will probably be about 25, 30 minutes, but overall, we will have time to ask questions. If you need to contact me after the conference or whatever, or after the session, feel free to email me at the email address listed on the slide here, or follow me on LinkedIn and we can talk there as well. But it's a pleasure to be here. And I think what this topic is going to kind of be interesting for everybody involved, because AI is actually a big deal. It actually started last year at Cloud World 2023 when Oracle announced their cloud platform with AI, with Cohere and everything else. So that got a lot of people thinking about, hey, how do I use this AI technology to do what I want to do? So that got me thinking, from my previous experience working at Oracle with product management on the Oracle GoldenGate side, and being able to see how that product matured from just a command line tool to a RESTful API-based tool into a cloud tool like OCI GoldenGate. How can we manage all this stuff now with an AI approach? So with that, I'm going to just put out a disclaimer here, just real quick, just to kind of say what I'm about to show you guys and what I'm doing is that this is a lot of custom items that which us at Data put together and kind of show you how to do it. But we're not going to show you the full end-to-end product, but I think it's a good starting place for anybody who is looking to do AI and try to figure out some things with AI across the board. So if you take some of the examples I give you and you say, hey, I want to try this, feel free to try it, but just know it's all basically experimental at this point and just trying to drive some narratives forward with it. So the objective overall, what I'm getting at is the objective of how do we build GoldenGate processes today. That process of building a GoldenGate process is really time consuming, and Oracle's gotten better at it from when it was on premise with the command line tool. It was probably about a series of 6 steps to create an extract, 5 or 6 steps. And then when we went to RESTful API, you still had the 5 or 6 steps in the command line, but on the back end, it was really calling a RESTful API. And so if you're following along with GoldenGate stuff, that interface is now RESTful API pieces, and those allow you to very dynamically build some of the stuff. So we start taking that approach and go, hey, I can do this now a little bit faster. How can I make this easier? And that's where I started to apply the AI piece on top of GoldenGate, trying to figure out how can I make AI build my GoldenGate pipelines? How can I make it build these things and diagnose what's going on versus just having to write a script every single time I need to build something? How can I make this thing more automated across the board? And using the RESTful API endpoints allowed us to do these dynamic builds of pipelines, allowed us to do more of an automation of the common processes, i.e. extraction replicates and distribution servers and creating accounts, and also be able to query the environment and say, hey, tell me what's up and running. And we'll give you an example of a couple of those examples across those things, that which is all driven by these RESTful API approaches, but the AI is making the calls, not a human basically writing a script and doing it. So that was the objective here, was trying to figure out how to make an AI interact with an external tool. So, and the reason why I chose GoldenGate with this, because of the RESTful API framework for one, but also GoldenGate is the enterprise leading data replication tool, data distribution tool. Probably 90% of the businesses out there use GoldenGate in some fashion, whether it's an on-prem version or even the OCI GoldenGate version. They're all using API. So that was the reason why I pulled these things in together. But they're using them for multiple reasons across the board. And the platform provides real-time integration with minimal latency, change data capture, which a lot of customers have issues with because they're not quite grasping what the definition of lag is at times. And so this approach kind of helps them understand that. The RESTful API-based microservices is a differentiator in the industry. And when you start looking at what GoldenGate's doing with RESTful API versus its competitors like Click and HVR and Fivetrans, stuff like that, GoldenGate's the only one that's really got the robustness of the APIs that they have. So it lends very nicely into this framework of what we're trying to do. The high performance, you can move high volumes of data very quickly, but how do you do that and make sure that those things are done successfully? And then as well as integration across multiple targets and multiple sources. Source and targets across the board. I think last time I checked, there was a couple of hundred. I think we're approaching pretty much getting close to 1,000 different targets now. So it's a lot of different things. But additionally, the last thing that the framework brings to us is a role-based security framework that which can be driven into these architectures as well. So as you start looking at this and start understanding, hey, how can I make an AI execute an external tool? What's the security things around that? And with GoldenGate, you have that already built in. You just got to know how to call it. So a lot of functionality inside the current release of GoldenGate that gives you a lot of flexibility to do these things. But remember, our main objective was to figure out how to interact with GoldenGate from an AI standpoint. So all the common use cases, this is where it gets very interesting. So when you start trying to overlay an AI strategy on top of GoldenGate and how it works, you have to deal with a wide variety of use cases. You have to deal with multiple servers, multiple architectures that are kind of put in place. And these topologies are very common, right? Unidirectional is very easy. It's usually one hub server that you can manage both source and target from, or it's a 2-server architecture where you have GoldenGate set up. So that's a very easy approach to kind of say, hey, how do I implement this and get an AI to execute on it? But when you start talking about these things as they start building, bidirectional is multi-master, peer-to-peer, basically broadcasting, how do I subset data? How do I consolidate data into a data warehouse, basically? And then cascading it, how do I get that subset of data again out to different places? So when you start looking at all these use cases, how do I plug an AI on top of these things? And the simple answer is that you have to build this AI around a server-based approach. So you have to know the servers that your GoldenGate's running on. You have to know how many servers you have involved. and what is the interactions between these APIs that's going to happen. So it becomes a very cumbersome thing, but we're going to show you the basics of how to build a process for one of these things, dealing with one of the things. So we're taking the unidirectional approach when we're laying out this framework and just trying to understand how an AI will interact with the external tools. All right. So as I mentioned, the RESTful API framework inside of GoldenGate is very robust. It's probably more robust than any product which is out for data integration lately. Because I know the competitors are not necessarily, they're probably about 2 or 3 years behind the Oracle team on this. And this is one of the nice things, because while I was at Oracle, we were trying to pitch this so much to customers, they weren't grasping it, but now people are starting to get it. The APIs that Oracle GoldenGate proposes for everybody is very robust. It gives you the get, the head, the post, the put, the patch, the options, and the delete options. So you can do anything you want within GoldenGate now from a RESTful API standpoint. And on top of that, you've got different types of medias that you can use with that, which is JSON, schema JSON, plain HTML, and XML. So very flexible. And then you can pass in a couple of different types of headers, which allows you to interact with the environment, whether it's logging in or understanding post and put processes across the board. You also notice that the ones that I have listed here in red, the get, the post, and the delete, are all the processes that I'm going to show you within this presentation across the board and how it works. So from a GoldenGate perspective, GoldenGate 23 AI, it started in 12C with 12.3, but all the way through 23 AI, it's a very robust RESTful API framework that will allow you to dynamically build and interact with your GoldenGate environments now. So you can basically automate GoldenGate from end to end now. So what does that mean? This means that we here at Rio Data, we've actually kind of said, hey, we're going to try something. We're going to take an AI and we're going to throw it on top of this RESTful API endpoint. And so we basically called it EDDI, EDDI. I won't tell you where the name came from off the top of my head, but it basically means engineered, dedicated, and designated intelligence. So basically we're saying, hey, it's smart enough to go, let's build out a process or two, replicate the data, and then if we have any errors, let's figure out what those errors are and see how we can diagnose those things. Is it a full automation framework? No, it's not. But it leverages the Oracle Database 23 AI vector search. So inside the vector search, we actually include all the reference documentation for Oracle GoldenGate. So, and if you ever take the time to look at Oracle error codes, you'll be amazed by how many there are. In Oracle GoldenGate alone, there's 5,100 error codes which covers a wide variety of platforms, but they're so cryptic. And trying to solve some of those things when you get them takes time and effort and understanding. So we're trying to make the AI to be a little bit more aware of, hey, how do I resolve this and referencing things across the board with the RAG? And then at the same time, we're also using the RESTful API endpoints to provide recommendations, diagnosis of those error codes, and to build these processes out across the board. So it's a very interesting time to start building out these frameworks across the board. Now, at this point, I'll stop to see if there's any questions. I don't see any in the Q&A, but if there's any questions, feel free to ask any stuff going forward. So I don't see any, so we're going to just go ahead and, Jim, do you see any?
No, so far, not so far, Bobby.
Okay.
But folks, I was just going to drop a line in there and encourage you, please do add questions. Bobby's going to get in depth here in just a few minutes, so I'm sure that's where more questions are going to be coming in. But keep going, Bobby. This is excellent.
Yeah. So AI is cool. GoldenGate's used to be cool, but I still think it is. So trying to mirror these two things together is really interesting. But EDDI is what we came up with to do this. So when we start looking at how we automate this whole thing, right? So we got 5 steps in most traditional RAG implementations, which is the user requests something from the AI. The AI has to go pull that data from that private data, if need be, from a vector store somewhere, i.e. this is 23 AI. And then it moves that prompt plus the user request in a prompt with the documentation that it retrieved into the LLM. And then, of course, it returns a response and gives the users the response. That's the typical model. But what we were trying to solve is, how do I get the LLM to actually execute? So when I say build me an extract with this parameters, how do I get that to actually happen, right? So there's a couple of things that has to happen in here. So we're actually, do we retrieve data from the private repository, or do we just say, hey, go out and execute this and tell me the response? Most LLMs that are out there, we've tested this on OpenAI as well as Cohere command structures. They are not trained on microservices for GoldenGate. If you ask it for a general question of hey, how do I build an extract using the RESTful APIs, it gives you a command from the GGSCI from GoldenGate 11G. So not all the LLMs are really up to train yet. So we had to supplement that with the private data in the repository. However, it gets a little bit easier. What I mean by gets easier, if you look at the documentation for both OpenAI and Cohere, you'll start seeing references to functions and tools. Functions and tools are a way to tell the LLM how to actually interact with an external tool or a system. So whether it's through a chat AI or a chat API or through an assistant API, these capabilities can be extended to using external tools now. So you can say, hey, I want to do this. I want to build a process inside my GoldenGate framework. So what function or tool do I have to call? These are great in terms of these following use cases, whether you want to fetch, refresh data, right? So you want to do basic initial load, you can have the AI do that for you now too by just saying, here it is. If you want to automate something, you want to automate the reporting of a up-down status, you can do that now in AI and just have the AI report on that when you request. You can perform computation. Statistics is always a question in GoldenGate. People ask, how do I know data is moving? You can have the AI just tell you what the statistics are now, instead of having to go to the command line and say, hey, how do I do this? But at the end, you can build these rich workflows and really scale your GoldenGate environment. And so overlaying it on top of these GoldenGate frameworks is going to be huge. And at the same time, you give access to a new user interface, whether it's in Slack or MS Teams or some other tool that you can now, somebody can just have a conversation with the GoldenGate environment versus, hey, go log into a server and tell me what's happening. So it gets very interesting. So if you're looking for ways to do this, the functions in OpenAI or tools and Cohere is the way you want to do it. The only difference between the two, besides the naming, is that in OpenAI, functions is listed out separately, and you can go look it up and you can see how it works with both chat and streaming models, where tools is only relegated to the chat models inside of Cohere. So it's buried in the documentation. So you just got to know where to go find those particular things. So how do we do this? We're going to use a function at OpenAI to do this. And so, but first thing we have to do is define on what function we want to use. So we want to say, hey, we're going to take a extract function. We're going to say, go build an extract and figure out how it's doing. So what you have here on the screen is a modified version of a script that I would always run to create an extract. This script was written in Python. But the big thing to point out here is really the payload section. The payload section, earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that Oracle GoldenGate to build an extract takes you about 5 to 6 commands at the command line to do that. Within the payload section here, it's all consolidated down into one payload. So you're telling the API basically, hey, the config stanza is my parameter file. The source stanza is where I'm reading data from. The credentials is how I'm logging into the database. The name and size MB is really the size of the information I need for my trail file. And then the last thing is the status, saying, do I want it stopped running or what, or so forth. So this is a very simple thing to do, but when we want the AI to do it, the AI cannot run this script. So how do I make that run? As I mentioned, functions and tools is how you do it, but in order to make it work, you have to format the functions and tell the function what parameters it expects to have. So in this case here, we're saying, hey, the function I'm using out of the script is build an extract. So I have to tell the AI, hey, I want you to build an extract. And then I'm going to name that build extract, name the function build extract. I'm going to give it a description of building an extract process. And then I want to provide all the parameters I need, which are object types. And so and then their properties. And so I've got a base URL, port, and then a process name, schema table. And then you see some ellipses here. So this thing is quite long. It gets quite long depending on what you're trying to pass into it. But what's important to understand is at the very bottom of these function calls is the required line. The required line is there, and you have to pass in all these parameters so the AI knows what it's looking for and what it needs in order to execute, right? And then so down at the required line, you see I got base URL port, that constitutes the base of a GoldenGate call for the RESTful APIs. The process name, the trail file size, alias, and the username and password that I'm going to use in my header to log into the GoldenGate environment. Now, if you notice, though, there's a couple of things. If you were to compare documentation to what's on the screen here, the base URL and the port stanzas have a line called default. Those default lines are not listed in documentation. So how do you specify what's going to change? You would have to put in defaults here, and then programmatically somewhere in your code would actually say, hey, here's how I would define this, and use that in the required base. And so the requirements would be there, and then the AI will look at this when it's called. So when you do a command like build me an extract, it's going to look at the functions that it's got available to it in its toolkit and say, hey, I know how to do this, and go run that. And so it's not going to necessarily run the code. It's going to run this function and know how to actually background process everything. Right, so this is an example. This is where we're going to build an extract. So this is going to rotate a couple of times, but I'll explain it. So I'm just saying build an extract with the following parameters. I'm giving it the extract name, the trail file name, the size of the trail file, the source of the database login, and then the thing. And as you see, it pops up on the screen in the GoldenGate environment. So the AI built the whole thing, returned a message back saying that it was executed successfully, and here's the information in regards to it. And now I'm just checking out the contents to make sure that was built correctly, because if I wanted it to run, it should just come up and run. But as you can see, it tells you everything that it was built out to, and says here you go, and it's ready to go. So it's very simple, very easy, but it's letting the AI build these things. So I'm not having to go execute a script somewhere else. I'm just letting the AI do the whole process, right? So now in this case here, I'm just checking for the status of it. This is another function that we were doing, checking the status. I say, hey, tell me the status of it. So it should come back and say that it's down, that it hasn't been up yet, and that it stopped. Right. So very easily documenting and identifying what's happened. And if you build this into a wider architecture, you can go query multiple things at the same times. And then lastly, we're going to remove the extract, but this one's not auto running, but it'll go out and remove the extract, and you'll see it remove out of the whole thing. So I don't no longer have to really say, go execute a command inside of admin client to execute it, or be 5 clicks inside of a GUI. It'll just remove it for you. Here you go, and move on. And then it reports out what's happening, why it had different problems, and so on and so forth. Right. But there is one problem with the deletion process, and that's due to when you remove an extract out of GoldenGate, out of the Oracle side, it does not remove it out of the DBA_capture table. So you have to know how to drop it afterwards. So even though the AI dropped it, if you wanted to recreate the extract of the same name, you have to go drop it with DBMS capture admin drop capture to clean up the data dictionary. That's a step that should be done through Oracle's API, but it's not at the moment. And so we're working with Oracle to try and resolve that. But that's just an extra step that has to be done. So let's revisit back to this now. Now that we understand that, hey, we know how RAG works, right? The top half here is retrieving documents and giving other things. And we now see that we can have an LLM build out some processes for us. what else can we do with this? What's the other things we can do? One of the things you can do is very quickly monitor and diagnose GoldenGate then, right? So if we want to monitor GoldenGate, this one's going to check the deployments of all the deployments that we have running on this particular server. And so I'm just saying, hey, tell me the status of all the deployments. It'll return a result set saying, hey, these deployments are up or these deployments are down, and how they are running. And then from there, you can very quickly diagnose what do you really want to do with this, right? And ask the AI the next thing to do. Hey, go into deployment Atlanta, and then tell me the status of those things. So you're letting the AI basically dictate and walk you through the whole environment and understand what's going on. And then lastly, Oracle GoldenGate errors are notorious. I mentioned this earlier. There's about 5,100 of those. And so here's an example of using the RAG approach with the Database 23 AI vector store to actually resolve a SQL exec error, right? OGG 344 tells you, hey, this is a SQL exec error. And if you can see, if it's not scrolling too fast, it tells you what the error is. It tells you how to resolve the error. It gives you an example of the correction. And then it tells you an output before and after the correction for how you would have to fix it and execute it. And then it provides you some tips on debugging it as well. So it speeds up the execution time of understanding an error code and how you have to resolve these things, and hopefully save some headaches on the support side as well, trying to get Oracle support to resolve and give us some answers across the board. So some final thoughts on this thing. I think we're just about out of time, but some final thoughts on this is really the fact that Oracle GoldenGate can now really be automated. It was actually automated with the advent of RESTful APIs, but now you can take it even further. You can automate it some more, but there is some legwork you have to do previously to make sure that the AI understands everything which you want it to do. And then you can also farm this out once you have it configured the way you want. You can farm it out to administrators and developers and can dynamically build. They can dynamically build these processes too if they want by simply using natural language. And just say, hey, go build me this, go initial load this, and do these things right across the board. So by thinking outside the box, AIs are going to give you a lot of capabilities to building a data platform across the board with everything else. So I see some questions pop in. I'll get to those in just a second. But three takeaways I wanted people to get from this is really the AI is really it's a pseudo black box, right? Whether it's online or it's in the 23 AI database, how you use it is really up to you. But at the same time, how do you make this interact with external applications? Hopefully, we showed that and showed you some ways to do that very easily. But you can now also, once you do that and you know how those functions and tools are used, you can now work with your GoldenGate environments in natural language processing approaches. And then lastly, you can very easily use this to check your GoldenGate processes across the board. So at this point, I'm not an AI, so I can't answer every question, but I will see what questions are here, and then we will answer those accordingly. So let's see here.
Excellent. So, Bobby, we got a question from Keith. If you're coming into an existing Eddy environment, I love the name, by the way, can you query it to understand what capabilities were built into it? Basically, what can I ask you, or what capabilities do you have?
Right now, there is a very small set of capabilities that are in there currently, but you can ask it, who are you? What's your purpose? What commands can I ask? And it will tell you those particular functionalities that are there already.
Oh, okay. And yeah, one comment I was going to make too. I used to teach the GoldenGate administration class, and wow, folks, if you haven't used GoldenGate and you're diving into it for the first time, it's almost like becoming a DBA, right, Bobby? I mean, there are so many things, so many options, so many things that you can do and do wrong the first time, right?
Yes.
So, and that's just getting the environment set up, right? So do you find my question for you is, do you feel that this really simplifies it for, say, some of the clients that you might have, or even for just the things that you do?
It simplifies the things that I do because of the fact that I know what I have to look for. But the goal of it is really to simplify it for the end user, is to help the end user
Ah,
understand the basics of Oracle GoldenGate. But that doesn't preclude them, because as I showed the building of the extract, you look at the parameter file. Oracle's done a very good job of trying to get the parameter file down to a very basic parameter file to make sure
mm,
replication works. But there is still use cases that which you will have to go out and put in parameters and those things. The AI is not aware yet of, say, of scenarios like, hey, I want to build a bidirectional setup, right? It can go out and build you
okay.
2 extracts, 2 replicats, but it's not at the point yet where it says, okay, I need to put in set tag and exclude tag for looping purposes,
Right,
or
right,
I need to put
right.
in
Oh,
DDL things.
uh-huh.
So there's still things that which have to be added and critiqued a little bit more. But the root fundamental of the whole thing allows you to actually diagnose error codes, see your environment, and understand what's going on. You could, but we haven't got to where we can edit parameter files yet.
Okay, gotcha. I don't have any other questions in the queue right now. Wow, this has been mind expanding for me. Um, and I know we could have gone a lot longer on this and gotten in a lot deeper. So, folks, I did post Bobby's email address in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out to Bobby. Um, but if there's no other questions, I'd like to go ahead and wrap up today's TechCast. Can you give me those last couple of slides, Bobby, just
Yeah.
to wrap
Well,
up things? Oh, thanks.
appreciate everybody letting me
Yeah,
talk.
folks.
So thank you for coming.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And folks, we still have time. So we usually go for about 35 to 40 minutes. So please, if you have any other cues, feel free to reach out. I do want to, again, repeat and tell you about the Analytics and Data Summit that's coming up again in next April. I attended this last year, presented. I'm hoping Bobby will bring this to in a much more fleshed out form once he submits his abstract. Reminder, Bobby. And again, folks, if you have an idea or you have a colleague that's interested in presenting on anything, business intelligence, analytics, machine learning, AI, this is one of the few conferences that truly does focus specifically on all of those things inside Oracle. And also, by the way, spatial and graph is another thing that we focus on. One of the things that's great about the Summit 2025 is that since we're in Redwood Shores, we get a lot of the top Oracle talent that you would never have a chance to get close to at something like Oracle Cloud World. Love Cloud World, but getting close to folks like that can be really tough. We had Maria Colgan, we've had Gabby Rubin, where you can actually sit and question folks, have lunch with them, and talk to them at length. One more slide, and I think we're almost done. The last thing I wanted to mention is, again, please do reach out to us. Check out our website. We're refreshing that portal even today as we speak. If you've tried to volunteer before, we actually just found a few days ago that we had a broken link out there. So if it didn't work for you, please try it again. It's right at the footer of every single page. Please do reach out to us. We'd love to get you more involved. Any other questions from anyone else out here? And here's Bobby. Oh, thank you, Bobby. Your contact information, that's kind of important. So please feel free to reach out to Bobby. Bobby, have any last thoughts?
No, I just hope this kind of inspires people to think outside the box a little bit and try to figure out
Yeah,
how they can now take an AI and tie it into an external application. Because I'm only showing you with this with GoldenGate. You know, there's examples out there for using it with SQL and generate SQL statements and stuff like that. But generating text is one thing. Having the AI
yeah,
actually execute something is a whole nother. So hopefully this
absolutely.
kind of gets everybody in the mindset of going, how do I make this happen for somewhere else? So
Right, right. I think it's a super practical application because, like I said, Golden Gate ain't trivial. You know what you're doing to set up an extract, a replicat. It's a great idea, Bobby. Well, with
Yeah,
that, folks,
thank you.
thanks for joining today. Thank you, Bobby. Thanks for bringing this to everybody's attention. And we hope to see you on October 17th at our next webcast, TechCast. Have a great day. Have a great morning. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.